Today's presenters are Brian Galanek and Dr. Tyler Amell. Dr. Tyler Amell is the Chief Relationship Officer at Core Health Technologies, a leading corporate wellness technology company. He is an internationally recognized thought leader on the topic of workplace health and productivity. He has presented at over 160 conferences globally and published numerous scientific papers and reports. He is on faculty at Pacific Coast University for Workplace Health Sciences and is on the executive board at the Work Wellness and Disability Prevention Institute, as well as the National Wellness Institute. He has held senior executive positions in a variety of sectors, including human resource technology, consulting, and healthcare. Brian Galanek is a certified professional of incentive management, also known as CPIM, and the president of All Star Incentive Marketing, a 45-year-old company that helps its customers focus on improving the safety, health, and wellness of workers by first improving employee engagement. He is a member of the Incentive Marketing Association and other strategic industry groups and a board member of the Incentive Foundation. He has produced countless articles and white papers and presented dozens of seminars and webinars on these and related topics to HR, safety, and operational leaders around the world. So without further ado, let's hand it over to Brian Galanek.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Dr. Amell, for once again joining me in this presentation. Thank you to everybody for being here. Over 1,000 registrants for this webinar, so the topic clearly resonates with people. And this is against the backdrop of the pandemic we're living through and the fact that everything's a Zoom call these days. So I'm particularly impressed that people would welcome another Zoom call into their life. The subject matter clearly resonates, and hopefully we will not disappoint you today. I'm going to give you a lot of great information, give you some swing thoughts that'll hopefully give you some idea of what you could be doing differently within your organization to generate all kinds of benefits. We're going to wrap this thing up in an hour total, and less than an hour from now. We're going to leave open some time at the end for some Q&A. That tends to mean this. I'm from the Northeast. I talk fast. You may have heard Dr. Amell just ask me. My Boston Bruins lost last night and are now out of the playoffs. They lost to Tampa Bay Lightning. If you're thinking to yourself, there's no way a team from Florida should beat a team from Boston in hockey, I totally agree. But there's nothing I can do about that now. So empathy and recognition in times of uncertainty and radical change. Okay, throughout the course of this webinar, there are opportunities from now to the end of the webinar to ask questions and plug in comments, and please do so. And I want to capture your attention right now by telling you this: those that put in the best comments or the best questions are going to get rewarded, either with a pair of Maui Jim sunglasses or Stockyard steak packages, Omaha steak packages, right? So put in the best observations. Doesn't have to be a question. It can be some sort of shared experience, or ask the best questions. I'm going to answer the questions and speak to the comments at the end in a response file when this thing's all done. But the best feedback we get is going to get rewarded along the way. So please help your fellow HR participant here in again, contemplating the right issues as we go through this. So here's the agenda. Not going to spend a lot of time on this because we're about to go through it all. But the bottom line is we're going to talk about how what change is all about and how it affects people, and then talk about the role of empathy and recognition and the foundation of engagement, and how that drives basically everything you do, everything your company does in terms of success. Give you some best practices and some tips along the way. Okay, next 3 slides are going to go real quick because they all tell the same story. It's just after I put them together, I'm like, I want to use them because they do tell the same story, but sometimes when you look at it, it's kind of revealing, right? So what's going on in the last 10 years? Well, we have pandemics. Well, not just COVID. Triple E, if you're not from the Northeast, you may not know this, but it's Eastern equine encephalitis, and it's god awful. You don't want to get it, right? And Zika and what have you. There's always been pandemics. This one is outsized, needless to say, relative to the rest. But there's climate change, the superstorm Sandy, Deepwater Horizon explosions, and then you have the good things, air quotes around good, right? Wide use of smartphones, robotics, ride sharing, job sharing, house sharing, everything sharing. These are the things that have happened just in the last 10 years, and changes are accelerating. But if you go back 20 years, you had pandemics. You had SARS, Ebola, and the swine flu. You had man-made and natural disasters again as well. Hurricane Katrina, god-awful things, right? Financial collapse of 2008. There's been a financial collapse every 10 years. Some are worse than others. You had 9/11. You know, what more can you say in terms of how these things affect us? And at the same time, you had the Internet of Things arriving, shopping online taking off. 20 years ago, Amazon was probably a $20 million a year company, right? Smoking in the workplaces. Can you even imagine going to sit in a restaurant right now and having be smoking, right? Changes you don't even see coming. And then you can't believe how far the world has changed. And 30 years ago, again, HIV, AIDS for pandemics, Oklahoma City, and then all kinds of other things that happen on the technology front and disruption. And so what's going to happen in the next 10 years? A lot of the same, right? Good and bad. There's going to be pandemics. There's going to be a financial collapse. There's going to be war and terrorism. I'm sorry to say all that, but that's just, why wouldn't there be? There always is. And you and your people, okay, and you and your role as HR, know that these things exist. And this is where the word empathy comes in, right? You have to be empathetic to the fact that the entire world is dealing with these things, these challenges, good and bad, or just technological, just different, and how that affects people, and yet still try to have the most productive, the most engaged, the safest, the healthiest workforce with the lowest possible turnover, the best customer service, and the best training and retention, right? You got to do that against the backdrop right now, among other things, about kids running around your house screaming, the dogs, because they can't go to school because of COVID, while you're still trying to do your job, right? Or your employees are. All right, so we're going to ask 3 poll questions during the webinar. And I should have said actually up front, best comments, best questions, and answering the poll questions at the end. There's 3 questions at the end. It'll take you about, I don't know, a minute to answer them. If you enter questions and comments and answer those poll questions at the end, you get a chance to be rewarded with one of these products I talked about. So here's the first poll question. How effective do you think your company is at managing change, right? It's sort of teed up by what I just talked about. Change is constant, change is accelerating, the world is a big place. And so, and Mike, just throw the results up on screen and I'll push them out there as soon as I see enough come in. But highly effective, somewhat effective, or sort of middle of the road, or somewhat ineffective or very ineffective. I want to just get a read from the people that are on the call here today and get some idea of how effective you think your company is at dealing with change. And the fact that you're on the call is somewhat of an indicator that maybe not good enough, because this is part of what we're here to talk about today. And thank you. I see the answers pouring in, hundreds of them right now. I'm going to drag my feet another 5 seconds. Yeah, that ought to about do it. And I'll go ahead and push this out the door. Okay, so here's what we got. Somewhat effective is the lead answer. Congratulations. And if you throw highly effective in there as well, you got about 60%. Good for you. Great for you. Okay. Hopefully you're got your finger on the pulse there. And then you get the middling sort of effective, and then 17% ineffective and very ineffective at 3%. So you got about 40% that are sort of average to below average, and 60% above average. Great. No matter where you are on that, though, I bet if I asked the follow-up question, which said, I bet if I asked the follow-up question that said, who wants to be better at it? I'd get 100%. We all want to be better at it. Who doesn't want to be better at dealing with change in their company life, in their family life, and what have you? The better you can deal with it, the better we can move on. All right. So next slide comes to one of the topics here for today is empathy, right? And again, we know, you sort of know what it is, right? You know it when you see it. But empathy really comes in 3 forms. If you again want to get into the clinical, technical sort of academic definition of it, cognitive empathy is too little. Okay, as I say here in the slide, it's under emotional, it's observational only. It's just simply like I'm empathizing with you, but only because I recognize that you're in a bad way. I don't feel it, but I just duly noted, you're in a rough time, right? That's cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy is too much. Is too much really from the standpoint of it being in an empathetic position. You don't want to be a bubbling, blubbering, crying, sobbing when one of your employees is in a bad way, because obviously that's not going to help them and it's not good for your job. So it's almost too much of an emotional reaction. With compassionate empathy is a term that sort of fits the bill properly. You feel their pain. You understand what it's like to have, again, kids who can't go back to school, or aging parents who you can't possibly go near during COVID times. You understand that to be empathetic is to truly feel a little bit of what your employees have. So when you got to go back to work schedule that you're trying to put together as HR because the C-suite told you, get them back in the office a few days a week, that it's not one size fits all, right? So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with your managers and your employees? Again, manager and employee relationship is the #1 most important relationship. How do you give your managers, how do you empower them to feel empathetic and to deliver that empathy, and to make sure your employees feel like their situation is not being ignored, right? And so the role of empathy, really, it's not just an HR role. It really is about the manager piece. I mean, even if you only have 50 or 100 employees on this call, there's no way for you to be the empathetic ear to every one of your employees. And if you have 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, clearly you can only do so much as an HR manager. What you're really trying to do is empower your managers or supervisors to carry forward that message to your employees and to give them the tools that make it really easy to feel and show empathy in these situations, right? So delivering empathy and employee recognition can be the most important and fun part. It's the human side of human resources, right? So much of your job is really based on legal requirements and what have you, when you get a chance to really help your employees over the hump on something, and show empathy, all the more reason why they're going to stay there, work harder, and work smarter, right? So now spinning over to recognition, right? We have to deliver empathy. How do we deliver it, particularly in larger organizations? And how do we empower our managers and supervisors to do that? We also have to deliver recognition, right? Across the board, this isn't even one of the stats on the slide, but it's true across the board. When you ask people why they leave a job, the number one answer for decades now has been lack of recognition. Okay, it's pretty close with compensation, but it's generally speaking above it, and that's 1A and 1B, and everything else falls way beneath that, right? So employees, and in particular millennials, crave recognition, need feedback, or they're moving on. Okay, so some of the stats here: 87% of recognition programs focus on tenure alone. That's bad news. Okay, no offense to any of my brethren out there that provide service award programs, years of service, 5, 10, 15, 20 years on the job. Every company should have it. You don't want an employee to hit their 10-year job anniversary and have nobody notice. So you should have a service award program, but that service award program is a very, very tiny amount of recognition delivered in very small increments every 5 years. That's not your recognition program. And so the fact that that's the number one, again, air quote, recognition program in the marketplace is a real miss. That's not going to reduce your turnover. That's not going to get you better safety and wellness compliance. That's just sort of the bare minimum. I don't want your 20-year anniversary to go unrecognized, right? And so 58% of people, managers responded that recognition is the thing they could do better to improve engagement. Millennials require the most recognition. Millennials are now literally half the workforce. Okay, it snuck up on me. I don't know about you, but they're half the workforce. So it's not the big wave of workers that is coming. It landed, hit shore hard, and you now have more millennials in your workplace, or as many as you have just about anything else. All right, and the younger you go, the more they want feedback, they want direction, they want to feel like they're part of something important, they want to know the mission, they want recognition, or you're going to lose them. 69% of employees would work harder if they felt their efforts were better appreciated. 14% of organization provide managers with the necessary tools to reward, only 14%, right? 41% of companies use peer-to-peer recognition, great, but are they using it the right way? And what about the other 59%? Long-term this is long-term, right? Employee engagement is 24/7, 365. A sales incentive program could be a sprint with a stop and another sprint. Employee engagement, recognition, safety, wellness, and all those things, put manager spot awards, training, reinforcement. There's no good month to take off there. So that really needs to be long-term, not short-term. And 85% of employees, the vast majority, see a link between their level of motivation and the quality and quantity of their work, right? So basic facts and figures. And here's another one that we lead most webinars with right here. Really sort of a collection of facts and figures that all comes from Gallup. And by the way, whether it's Gallup or Gartner or EY or Harvard Business Review or any of the others that we rely on heavily, they all tell the same story. Percentages might change a little bit. They all tell the same story. You don't have a safety problem. You have an engagement problem. You don't have a customer service problem. You have an engagement problem. Okay, you don't have a wellness problem. The problem with your wellness program isn't your wellness program. It could be in part, but the problem is your employees are not engaged. You're not finding out how to keep them engaged, which is why when you launched the wellness program at first, you got 45 or 50% of your employees to do something in it. Great number. A year later, it was down to 20%, and right now it might just be a poster hanging on the wall, right? It's not engaging, and it's not capturing their attention, but there are ways to make it do that. So what this slide tells you is simply this. If in your industry, I don't care if you sell insurance, make cars, do whatever you do, construction, if in your industry, you're in the bottom 25% in terms of employee engagement versus the top 25%. Just all the other construction companies out there, top 25% over here, bottom 25% over here. If you're in that bottom, as opposed to that top 25%, you have much, much higher absenteeism, ridiculously higher turnover, shrinkage. You have a crazy amounts of additional accidents and injuries along the way, and you're losing customers left and right. Okay, and then the flip side is that, of course, is if you're in that top 10%, your customer retentions, your referrals are better, your productivity is better, your profitability is better. So when you get to the end of this deck, and I'm giving you sort of the tips for success and where do we go from here, one of them is going to be manager C-suite buy-in, getting top line managers and owners to understand this is the thing. You bring this to them and say, we're bleeding money. Okay, employee engagement isn't a nice to have, it's a must have, and we're bleeding money without it. Okay, next poll question. And again, this is for your edification, for you fellow hundreds of HR managers on the line here. What percentage of your employees do you think are engaged at work? I've been doing this webinars on these related topics for a long time. We ask this question over and over and over again, and we always get similar results. We'll see what we get here today. But go ahead and give me an idea. What percentage of your employees do you think are engaged at work? 5 simple categories. It's esoteric. I totally get that. I cannot, there's no way, well, you can know, actually. You can certainly say I'm drawing on the engagement survey that we recently did. But just more or less, what's your feel? How engaged is your workforce? And again, I see the answers pouring in, probably up to 300 or 400 right now. I'll give it one more minute just so it's statistically significant, and then I'll push out those results to everybody. Okay, so thank you for answering so quickly. Let me end the poll and share the results. So number one answer is 40 to 59%. Middle ground there is 50%, right? And then the second most popular answer is 60 to 79%. And then you got another 7% and 80 to 100. So 43, 26, and 7 is 76%. 76% of you think it's 40% and up. Okay. The average, I guess you'd say, what would you look at the average here? I would say the average answer is right around 60%, right? So the people on the call here right now feel like on average about 60% of your workforce is engaged at work. So here's the situation. Gallup State of the American Workplace. This has been repeated for now decades. I can't even tell you how many times they've run the study, with how many companies, with how many, hundreds of thousands or millions of employees. And it tells the same story. It moves a little bit from year to year, but it tells the same story. And EY does the same study, and Gartner does the same study, and they all come up with the same thing. Only about 30% of workers are engaged at work, okay, by their measure of engagement. The Gallup study is a 12-question quiz, okay, 12-question survey. And if you want to see what it is, just go Google Gallup 12-question State of the American Workplace study. And you're going to see questions like, my manager seems to care about me as a person. I've made a friend on the job or not. The company cares about, notices my efforts, right? These types of questions basically give them back this answer that say about 30% of workers are engaged at work. Another 50% are not bad workers, they're just not highly engaged, which again means you may not get that participation in the wellness program. You may not get quite the response you're looking for when you're doing these things, and 20% or so are actively disengaged. And this is the low-hanging fruit, the people that you need to move on from because they're really damaging your company. It's about $500 billion a year in losses to the economy from disengaged employees who just simply are not doing what they've already been taught to do. And millennials are now the biggest part of the workforce, and so on and so forth, right? So this tells that story, how, as I was saying earlier, you don't have a problem with X, you have an opportunity to improve engagement, from which you can get any number of different other improvements along the way. Okay, so what does this lead to? Some people are intrinsically motivated. Those people in that 30%, your type A personalities, those people who they wake up in the morning, their feet at the floor, they're ready to go, and they're all in. They share the company's mantra, they share the goals and objectives of the company, they believe in it, and they're going to go do a great job, and they're ready to launch the minute they hit the ground. Any rewards program you launch could be nice to have for them. It's not even that important for them, okay? It's that middle 60 or 70 or 80% that can be motivated along the way with the right recognition, with the right rewards, with the right incentives, placed at the right place at the right time, to get them to be more proactively engaged, to get them to pay attention to the safety training, the toolbox talk, the pre-shift stretching, participate in the wellness program, do their health assessment, actually mitigate by reading an article about their hypertension or what have you. All these things that nudge the ball forward in the right direction, and that produce a company that feels and demonstrates empathy for their employees, and as a result has more loyal employees with less turnover, better customer service, and everything I've said. And so how do you use one? Okay, you use the recognition reward component to get more of that behavior, that muscle memory that says, oh, when I come to work in the day, beginning of the day, I'm going to make a mental note that I want to drink 8 glasses of water. I am going to stand up every hour from my desk and do a quick stretch. Okay, I'm gonna join the walking club. I see a bunch of people doing that, right? I'm gonna double check my PPE before I go out on the job. That type of thing, right? You start to build a little muscle memory. You get there by recognizing and rewarding and empowering your managers to reward people along the way, and you start to build a better and better culture, right? When companies talk about having great cultures, some of that's hiring practices, some of that's training practices, and a whole ton of it is engagement practices and what you do with it, right? And so when 3 and 2 come together, you end up with a far better culture. Okay, so that was a blitz. By the way, I know I talk fast. You're welcome to listen to this recorded after and slow the speed down if you have to, but I'm in a hurry to get to the Q&A, and I wanted to get to Dr. Amel. So I'm gonna bounce out right now. and let Dr. Mel kind of hit you with some facts and figures around wellness, and then I'll jump back in. He and I'll jump back in and finish it up and do the Q&A. So without further ado, Dr. Amell.
Thank you very much, Brian. One of the things that Brian and I are very much aligned on is this notion that, when it comes to the people that make up our organizations, it's very much a rich tapestry. Culture is intertwined. It's predicated on engagement. Part of the reason for me participating in this is because I've discussed the health components and how they actually interact with that. We're firm believers that, properly designed wellness or well-being programs are exceptionally great ways for organizations to demonstrate empathy towards their people, particularly in today's day and age. We have a pandemic raging right now. There's lots of pressures on the economy, on people's finances, on relationships, on their own individual health. They may not necessarily be active as they once were prior to the pandemic. Perhaps there's less options available for them, and so on and so forth. So this is an extremely timely presentation from my perspective. Now, one of the things that I'd like to start off this section of the talk is very much focused in on, who's in control of our health, and, what are the various elements that should be looked at by organizations when it comes to helping them understand the health and productivity paradigm and how it fits in the greater aspect of their organization. Well, it turns out that this is, an extremely well-studied aspect of society and organizations. When we look at things such as the determinants of health, which are things that are contributing to overall well-being, the majority of our own individual health is actually related to the individual behaviors that we have. So these are the individual choices that we make, the foods that we choose to eat, the foods that we have available to us, how close in a parking lot, and when we're driving to visit a location, are we parking from the entrance? If you park very far away, you've got an opportunity to get more steps in or take the stairs, versus, people who are parking a little bit closer and getting less opportunity there. And so all of these sort of decisions that we make have the single greatest impact on our health. Of course, there is social circumstances, there's genetics and biology that play a role in that. And of course, your access to medical care and the quality of that medical care. And of course, your environment. So this is one of the things that forms the foundation of strategies, not just from a public health or population health perspective, but from a workplace health and productivity perspective, which is the area that I tend to focus in on. Now, whenever I talk about employee health and talk about wellness and well-being, I very much look at things through that threaded lens. Okay, this is a rich tapestry. It's something that we need to look at from a variety of different angles. I use the term fitness of duty a little bit differently from many other people out there. When you look at the term fitness of duty, it's not just about people who are showing up for work impaired, perhaps under the influence of cannabis or alcohol. Although we know, based upon our experience with the pandemic, alcohol and cannabis consumption is up rather dramatically in places where there have been lockdowns and even after lockdowns and so on. But it's really about fitness for duty in the broadest lens. It's about what people are caring to work with them. Is there depression? Is there anxiety there from that perspective? Are people worried about the strength of their job, their connection with the workplace? Are they worried about their relationships? Are they, worried about their children, going back to school? All of these sort of factors can weigh in on people. And of course, it doesn't just have to be a physical element, such as back pain or type 2 diabetes or cardiac disease or lung disease. But, when you have exposure to stresses and constant stresses around anxiety and these sort of things, they can actually manifest themselves and cause physical problems. And so these are things that we actually need to look at from a holistic sense, which I think makes a very strong argument for supporting, including well-being and health and productivity initiatives in your overall well-being strategy, not just in times of the pandemic, but in just in this course of doing good business, because people are very important to your business, and demonstrating empathy and demonstrating an interest and an investment in their own health does pay off dividends in spades to a rather significant degree, as Brian pointed out. Now, these data that are on the screen right now are from the Integrated Benefits Institute. So this is IBI. This is a San Francisco-based group. Great benchmarking data. It's free to employers to sign up for, access to good quality research, as well as some great benchmarking data. So you can gauge the health of your own workforce and benefit utilization against other peer organizations or against the US as a whole. So when we look at, absenteeism, it was on Brian's list for a reason. People who are absent from work due to whatever reasons, if it's a health problem, that's something that a health and productivity solution can help with. Presenteeism, for those not familiar with the term, are people who are present in the workplace, but not necessarily giving their best. So they're there in body, but perhaps not in mind, or perhaps they're disengaged. And of course, this has a relationship with presenteeism. Usually presenteeism is a little bit harder to measure. You have to infer it. It's very difficult to tell when somebody is not necessarily contributing. But at the end of the day, there are some good quality metrics that they can use to estimate the impact of presenteeism. IBI uses some rather complex models to get to this, and they estimate about 500 million days are lost due to presenteeism every year. In terms of the cost of absenteeism and presenteeism on the US economy, we're sitting at, again, around $500 million. But most strikingly, when you look at things from a benefit and a return perspective, for every dollar spent, about 61 cents is lost due to illness and injury. So this is quite important from a variety of different perspectives. Even if your well-being strategy is just focused on cost containment, on reducing the pharmacy spend or the absenteeism spend or any of the other elements of that, and not necessarily focused on the big picture, you can make a pretty strong argument that investing in the health of your people does make great financial sense. Plus, it has a lot of other benefits as well. So Brian, if we could move to the next slide. Now, when we look at health threats, these data are from a variety of meta-analyses. So meta-analysis is basically a study of studies where they look for broad trends in health outcomes. We know that focusing in on prevention, changing decisions around lifestyle, around behaviors, these sort of things can produce tangible results. And of course, a lot of these entities that are on the screen, these are health conditions, so heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, depression, they show up in your health and benefit spend, they show up in the pharmacy spend, your health spend, your extended benefit spend, so these sort of things are there, but they also have a measurable impact on people's lives. And so understanding that people can get sick and will get sick, and there are strategies that we can use and deploy to help people reduce their overall risk profile and live a more fulfilling life. And if your employer can play a part of that, well, I think that does make good sense. Now, but 80% of heart disease instances are in fact preventable. And these are preventable through the lifestyle changes that I mentioned before. So it has to do with nutrition, it has to do with physical activity, mindfulness, resiliency, these sort of things. About 80% of type 2 diabetes cases are in fact preventable. About 40% of all cancers in the US preventable, and about 38% of cases of depression are in fact preventable. So, these sort of things, it shouldn't be seen as something that, per person is a victim and there's nothing they can actually do about that. There is a tremendous amount that people can do to reduce their own personal risk, as well as organizations can do to reduce the overall organizational risk. So if we move on to the next slide, Brian, we'll see that this is just an example, a very high level overview, if you will, of the types of strategies that organizations can choose to invest in. You can look at health and productivity management in the broadest sense. So this is where your benefit plans, your disease management, well-being can come into play. There's EAP programs, a great example. Behavioral health issues and programming that supports that, particularly in times of pandemic. There's been a significant upswing in not only knowledge about the existence of these programs, but in utilization of these programs to really help people out. Interestingly, I met with an EAP company not that long ago, and they said in the early stages of the pandemic, people were trying to figure out what to do and how to prioritize and how to start to live their lives a little bit differently under the threat of COVID-19 and the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Now, that has since, changed a little bit, and people have a little bit more time, a little bit more understanding, so that people are actually reaching out to these organizations. So you didn't actually see a rush, if you will, to EAP right off the bat, but it has increased over time, which is great to see. Now, of course, you're always going to have ADA, AAA administration from a compliance perspective, as well as supporting people through that lens. And total absence management, looking at sick time, PTO, leave of absences, casual or intermittent. And then, the integrated disability approach. So this is your short-term disability or workers' comp, long-term disability, and of course your FMLA administration and everything that goes along with that. So again, this is much more of an integrated sense in how we help organizations understand the risks to their people and help support people through that lens of a rather rich tapestry around how health and productivity and engagement are very much linked with one another. So if we move to the next slide, Brian. Oh, we skipped one there. There we go. So part of the argument that I like to make is that it's difficult to get to a state of having an engaged population whereby discretionary effort is up. People are excited to be at work, to be employed, to have that relationship amongst their peers, and of course supporting their friends and family. It's very difficult to achieve those things if it's not built on a solid foundation of health. We have a very unhealthy population, and so this is very much at the front and center of how we actually arm and get people supported to the sense that we can have that level of engagement, and of course take it to the next level around productivity. When it comes to health and productivity analyses, I tend to look at things through the lowest common denominator or lowest hanging fruit. We look at absenteeism and work disability experience simply because it's very easy to measure, and you can draw a distinction between when people are absent and when they're not absent, and of course productivity taking place. Unfortunately, that's the state of it, is that we do have rather significant issues around absenteeism, which makes it excellent and very easy to assess productivity in that sense. But perhaps things have changed a little bit now that we've got a very large proportion of the population working from home. So at the end of the day, to summarize, it's quite difficult to get to the state of having an engaged population above that 30% level that Brian mentioned before, and being able to demonstrate empathy towards individuals if indeed we don't have a solid foundation of health in place. Now, that being said, one of the common questions that I get asked, not necessarily from HR, but more through HR via the CFOs of organization is there a business case for investing in the health of people? There's a great moral case, there's a great ethical case, and in many cases there's legal cases. But from a financial perspective, this is one question that does still come up from time to time. The research is pretty clear on this. This isn't a quarter by quarter strategy. If you're going to invest in the health of your people, you're not going to see results for years. If you've got a pretty substantial proportion of your population that's not healthy, any well-being program or wellness program is not going to deliver results, by the end of the next quarter, sort of thing. In particular, because when we look at chronic disease, chronic disease didn't happen overnight. That depression didn't happen overnight. That type 2 diabetes didn't happen overnight. Okay, it took a long time for people to get into that state. It takes a long time to get people the support that they need and for them to internalize the behaviors and the decisions on their own level of engagement with their healthcare. So this was a study that was done a couple of years ago by Ron Getzel and his team. And this actually looked at winners of the C. Everett Koop Award. So this is a former Surgeon General in the US. It's an award that reflects the outstanding capabilities or demonstrated capabilities of an organization around investing in the health of their people. And they looked at stock market performance with the S&P 500 over a long period of time. Okay, this was like a 14-year study overall. And what they found is that the organizations who invested in the health of their people actually had a much greater return on the stock price over organizations, so the entire rest of the S&P 500 entries who didn't win the C. Everett Koop Awards, about 325% for 105%. So from my experience, this is a very good study that does underscore that approach, and of course does help the CFOs out there who may not necessarily want to be supportive of these sorts of initiatives to bring them on side. Now, from an unfortunate perspective, when you look at the pandemic, we do see much more attention placed on employee health these days than we ever did before. So that it's quite good in the sense that, now this is receiving the attention that it has rightfully deserved. The downside is, of course, we've had to go through a pandemic to get to this point. Now, from a return on investment perspective, these are integrated data sets. So one is from the International Social Security Administration, one is from Baker et al. From Harvard, and then the RAND Corporation data. Whenever you talk about return on investments in health and productivity solutions, whether it be work reintegration, prevention programs, well-being programs, absenteeism savings, disease management, or even lifestyle management, The numbers are there. They are justifiable. They're not in the stratosphere, such as what you saw years ago. And that's probably what contributed a little bit to some negative perceptions around the wellness industry. You know, going in and promising a 5, 10, 15% return on investment is not verifiable. We didn't have actually research to show that sort of thing. And look at it through a different lens. You know, if you were going to invest in, let's say, a mutual fund, and somebody told you that you were going to get 15 times your money back, you probably wouldn't really believe them. So why would a workplace health solution be any different, considering all the intricacies and the factors that contribute to how people look at their health, and of course the health of their friends and families. So that being said, we move on to the next summary slide here, so that Brian can get back to the more integrated, holistic talk around the incentives and how they can support this. You know, work is essentially quite good for us, and it's good for who we are as people. It contributes to a healthy lifestyle, it contributes to longevity, it contributes to higher quality of life. So keeping people engaged in the workplace is just as much about your organization as it is their own personal empowerment. And of course, demonstrating empathy in these sort of times does go a long way towards underscoring that. Now, the opposite is quite true. Not working is even worse for us. You know, if you want to decrease your life expectancy, if you want to decrease quality of life and all these sort of things, remove people from the workforce. You know, that is not something that we're advocating by any means. Now, from a work disability perspective, you know, there's lots of things that people can do, even if they are ill or injured or sick. So you don't really need to get ill workers well to put them back to work. You put them back to work to get them well. And of course, this is being demonstrated in real time as we shift towards remote working wherever possible outside of the essential workforce. We're seeing that people can definitely be productive and can contribute meaningfully to the organization in many respects, regardless of their location or whether or not they're in a wheelchair. So these sort of things are quite beneficial, at least from my perspective, in looking at things through this lens. Looking forward to your discussion later on and your questions, and I'll turn it back over to Brian now.
Thank you. Very helpful, Dr. Mell. I greatly appreciate that information and that quick synopsis. And again, Dr. Mell's presentation alone could last for hours. You could do a deeper dive on all of this, but we're really just scratching the surface here, because the point we're trying to make is really the title of the session. And by the way, I see people already answering this question. So great, please continue to do so. Poll question 3, how would you rate the features and effectiveness of your wellness program? Keep piling those answers in, and I'll push that shortly. But again, what we're really connecting here, this isn't the deepest dive specifically on wellness any more than it's the deepest dive on any number of different topics along the way, like safety or what have you. What it is a deep dive on is, as I said earlier, employee engagement. All of these are opportunities to engage at a higher level with your employees, and then it becomes self-fulfilling, right? Cyclical, it comes back on itself. The better engaged they are, the more they'll perform in that wellness program, and the more you can get repeat behavior. So people on the line here, fairly evenly balanced. We do have, I guess I would say, somewhat effective, obviously, is the winning selection here, you know, followed closely by, I guess, somewhat ineffective and effective are coming basically a tie and what have you. And so, I mean, when I look at the 9% that say they don't have a program, when I look at the, you know, the very ineffective and the somewhat ineffective portions of those answers, which is going to be about 40% total, and even just the effective ones that I'm sure would wish they could do more out of it, you say to yourself, how do I get more out of my wellness program? I was just skimming some of the questions that we'll be getting to shortly as they were coming in, and there were questions about this, like, how do you get some people in a company who don't have children, as an example, or don't see the problems that other people are having, don't feel them themselves? Like, in other words, how do you get my employees to feel empathetic and to realize that we as an HR, it's not one size fits all, and we have, you know, a lot of different ways of addressing these problems, and sometimes we have to make exceptions to the rule. I mean, my answer to the question is that the better aligned that employee is with your company's goals and objectives, with your company's mantra, with your core values. I haven't seen any company of any size that has core values that don't in some way reflect on employees, right? Every company says our employees are our most valuable assets, and for good reason. And any company with a safety sensitive workforce talks about safety. And somewhere in your core values are your people, your customers, and your suppliers, and what have you. So you can get them better aligned by getting their attention at a higher level. You can get them better aligned by having managers who know where to put the recognition and specifically have easy ability to give that recognition and those rewards, right? So, I mean, literally, and what I'm talking about here is making it this easy, right? Click, click, swipe. Dr. Mell, thank you for doing a great job of the presentation. You need to make recognition that seamless, that easy, and that well aligned with your company's core goals and objectives and your company's mantra and core values. And once you have that, you start moving the needle. It doesn't happen overnight. Okay, it's not. I'm not suggesting it's easy. I'm suggesting with a little bit of effort, played out over a reasonably long length of time, a year or two, you will absolutely see better results. All right. So just to connect a couple of dots on the wellness piece of it, I keep saying the word safety. We run lots of safety incentive programs, recognition reward programs, but we also run sales incentive programs. We also run, customer service reward programs. We run peer-to-peer recognition. But I want to tie this back to safety because, again, if you're an HR professional, you may be responsible for wellness, but you have someone else in your company responsible for safety. And those two things are really, really flip sides of the same coin. So what this slide is highlighting is simply this. Well, what's obesity? Is it a wellness issue or is it a safety issue? Well, clearly it's both, right? Obesity leads to sleep apnea, one of the most direct results it can produce. Sleep apnea leads to tired driving leads to accidents, right? So who in the company is really concerned about obesity levels and getting people healthy or helping them with their diet and exercise? Well, is it HR? Is it safety? Is it operations? It should be the C-suite, right? And everybody should be aligned and say, we know we want fewer obese employees because we know it's better for them. We know we want less stress. Stress is now a reason to scare the heck out of any HR professional. Stress is now a reason for people to claim that they can't come to work and get this leave of absence that can last forever and then come back and go back out and come back and go back out. And people are feeling stress more than ever. I mean, I see in my own life, my own wife and my kids, I got 2 kids in college and in my own home life, it's stressful. And so in particular, times of change is stressful. This change in particular, the COVID one, is really stressful. How are we going to mitigate that? And it's, you throw your hands in the air and say, well, what are we going to do? Everybody's under stress. There's not much we can do. Well, there is. You can't solve it, okay, any more than you can just tell somebody who's afraid of flying, don't be afraid to fly. That's not going to help the situation, right? So you can't just say, don't be stressed, right? That's not going to solve anything. But if you give them the tools in a wellness platform and you compel them to use the tools, again, I saw another question come through that says, everybody knows that mental and physical mental health in general is going to make for happier employees. But what do you do with employees who just don't seem to want to go there? Well, that's all of us, sort of, right? I mean, I got 20 pounds I've been trying to lose for 20 years, right? How can, or some people are trying to quit smoking. Other people know they need to de-stress. Other people know that meditation or yoga might help them. They just don't try it. Okay, well, what if you get them to try it? Well, how are you going to get them to try it? Well, what if you had yoga teams in your business and you gave them 10 minutes to go try it and you brought in a yoga instructor and you gave them bonus points for testing it out or for self-reporting that they did yoga 5 times this week. And before you know it, they build a little muscle memory. Your recognition and your rewards along the way got a small segment of your audience to start trying yoga or meditate or join the volleyball team or go for bike rides or quit smoking, right? And as a result, you're just nudging it forward. But you nudge it forward for a long enough period of time and you make huge progress, right? So stress, high blood pressure, distracted driving, again, safety issues, wellness issues, employee issues, empathy abound, right? And then we come back to like smoking, and again, smoking is vaping and chewing and God knows what else come up with next. But all of these things lead to greater levels of absenteeism. We know this. Absenteeism disrupts the sales force. So health and wellness related to smoking and absenteeism and the safety of the guy driving the truck or swinging a hammer are all connected. And just the links between safety and wellness as it relates to low morale and high turnover, right? If you don't think as an employee that your company cares about you as a person, cares about your health and well-being, or certainly cares about you from a safety perspective when you're out on the job, you may have given them all the PPE they need, the hard hat, the hearing protection, the steel toe boots. You gave it all to them. You told them how to use it, but you don't. But 5 guys walk through the job site not wearing their PPE, and nobody corrects them. Okay, or more importantly, this guy walks through. Not only is he wearing his PPE, he's pulling people aside and coaching them up on how to do it, but he never gets recognized. So he's likely to do more of that or less of that, right? Recognition delivered along the way, rewarding delivered along the way, will engender more of the same behavior and benefit the entire company. And so this is the story I've been telling, and Dr. Amel and myself have been telling, which is that total employee engagement is the synergistic piece that ties all this together. Okay, you can go after one of these things, and very often you do. Very often it starts off as a wellness program, or it starts off as a safety program, or you got years of service in there, maybe peer-to-peer, maybe you do some spot awards. Before you know it, you start plugging in a few more spokes on the wheel. Okay, and once you get 3, 4 of these things going, okay, manager spot awards, service awards, safety and wellness component. By the way, you're talking about 0.5% of payroll to do it right. Could be less than that depending on the payroll, but 0.5% in most cases will get it done. Most companies are going to go give 2-3% cost of living raises every year. Maybe they'll give some more on the performance side. Maybe you don't get that 0.5% in 1 year, you get 0.25% for 2 years, or divide it by 3. But it would not be that hard to work yourself into a 0.5% of payroll or $150 to $250 per employee per year to hit safety and wellness employee engagement. And the payoff on that is about 4 to 1. Lower turnover, better referrals, healthier employees, fewer missed hours work, better customer service, better customer retention, better productivity, better profitability, and other things that, whatever, go on and on and on. So it's a drop in the bucket. The companies that do it and do it well reap the rewards. The ones that haven't quite jumped on that bandwagon yet this is the low-hanging fruit. Start to pick off wellness, safety, peer-to-peer. Maybe it's even nomination peer-to-peer, which is very inexpensive. Maybe it's just manager spot awards. So that manager can just walk up to that person doing it right on the customer service team or the sales side or a safety sensitive person and reward them. You'll start getting it going in the right direction. Total employee engagement. This is really what you're shooting for as you build out your program. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up with just a couple of slides here on keys to success. Many of these things are presentations in and on themselves. I actually, again, back to the Q&A, I saw a question come through about manager support, management level support. I told you up front, one of the first things I do if I wanted to get manager C-suite, owner support is I'd walk in to them and I'd show them those numbers. Okay, top 25%, bottom 25%. Where do we want to be? And this is about profitability and the overall success of the company. The other thing I do is go show them, Gallup's, best places to work, or Fortune magazine's, most innovative companies. I haven't seen anybody in the C-suite that doesn't want to be on those lists. And you get there by having highly engaged, recognized, and rewarded employees. The structure of the program. Again, this is one of those presentations unto itself. You really need, I know it's self-serving. I am an outside professional. Dr. Amel and Core Health are outside entities, but whether it's us or somebody else, don't try to go this alone any more than you're going to decide to go write your own, HR related software solution yourself. You could get almost everything right and make one mistake, and I guarantee you will, and it will totally devalue the program. And the worst part is your boss might look at you and say, Bob, we tried that. It didn't work. We're not going to do it again. And it's not because the idea was bad. It's because the execution was bad. There are some really, really important mistakes you can make along the way, like rewarding with cash, as an example, any number of other things along the way, small mistakes that can take a great program and totally devalue it. So get outside help putting these programs together. It should only be positive reinforcement. All I need to say about that is you have plenty of ways of punishing your employees, PIPs and what have you, and firing them. When you build a recognition reward program, it is all about action, reaction, positive behavior reward. You reward the people for doing it right to get more of that, and you will. Expand the reach is really what I was just talking about. It's the spokes on the wheel. You launched the wellness program, but the head of safety was interested as well, and you tied those two things together, and then you threw in something else, and you start to build out a total engagement program instead of something that's very focused on just one thing. Face-to-face recognition, wherever possible, very powerful to recognize people in face-to-face interactions. Or again, back to that yoga class, back to that healthy eating. Just 2 days ago, we had some company that makes healthy teas and healthy shakes come in here and give away free samples as part of our healthy eating program. I mean, the people that went in the kitchen, whether they like the shakes and the teas or not, still interacted in some way. And you start to get, again, interaction, human interaction. By the way, the number one indicator of whether you'll stay with a job when you're recently hired is whether or not you make a friend on the job. And it's a lot easier to make a friend on the job when you and 2 or 5 other people just got pulled together in a walking competition wearing your Fitbit, and you compare notes about how many steps you got in a given day, right? Win, win, win. I'm healthier on the job. I made a friend. My company's going to benefit along the way. And it's the smallest effort delivered multiple times to get you there. Benchmark and measure. Something like 80% of US companies don't measure the results, not just to what we're talking about here today, but they put programs in place. They sort of take it on faith that the programs are going to work well, and they don't measure the results. Measure your results, require your solution provider to measure the results. It's the only way to make the program better over a period of time. And patience simply speaks to what I'm talking about from the return on investment standpoint. It's investment and then return. Okay, you have to be willing to make the investment first. You got to give it really, 18 months, you need 18 months. You'll start to see something at about half of that. 9 months to 12 months in, you'll start to see the needle moving. By 18 months, you absolutely should see it moving. But don't launch a program and 6 weeks in go, people still aren't saying good things. You got to give it time. And of course, you got to build it right. And then these last 2 or 3, and really it's just a couple of things I'm going to combine together. Tangible rewards, I mentioned a minute ago. It's really important to use tangible rewards. Cash is a terrible motivator. Cash is actually a negative motivator in many cases. Most people, when you give them a cash-based reward, say, oh, you did a great job. You were healthy. You were safe. You were this. You were a mentor. You did a great job in training, and you throw $50 at them. Go ask them what they did with the $50 a month later, 6 months later. They'll give you answers like you see on screen here. Maybe they paid their bills, but you're not trying to pay their bills. That reward is not to help them pay their bills. No offense. Their paycheck and their wife's paycheck and whatever, that's the way they pay their bills. You gave them that reward because you wanted them to be safe on the job and you want them to continue to be safe on the job. And if they paid their bills with the $50 and can't remember what they did with it, you got no benefit out of it, okay? And some of the others on here, my favorite one is a lot of them will tell you they never got it because they don't remember it, right? So do not give cash. And here's maybe the most important part on this slide, and I'm sorry to gift card providers, gift cards are cash. Gas cards and gift cards and Home Depot cards and Walmart cards are cash. They're the same thing, okay? And you're gonna get as much enthusiasm out of your employees when you give it to them as you get from your mother when it's her birthday and you give her another gift card. They won't remember what they did with it. They won't tie it back to a company performance, and you get no bang for your buck. Cash and cash-like products are a waste of time. Use tangible goods, experiential rewards. That's one of the keys to success. You know, and again, programs that run now could have 50 slides like this. It's every brand name you can think of. The guy who wants to get something for his garage, his workshop is going to find it. The woman who wants something for herself personally, for the kitchen, for luxury goods or whatever, is going to find it. Watches, electronics, housewares, furniture, tools. The most important thing is if I get a shop vac, okay, and my wife gets a new microwave, whatever it might be, my wife gets the shop vac and I get the microwave, it doesn't make a difference. The point is, we're going to remember for the next 10 years, we got it as a reward for being safe, healthy, active from the company, and we're going to repeat the behavior. And then just to blitz the last two real quick, because I want to get to questions. Technology is your friend. I'm sure you know this, but use it and abuse it. Don't turn your back on any new technology. Remember, millennials, right? Millennials embrace technology. They try it out real quick. They decide if it works. So whether it's Fitbits and other wellness tracking devices or safety tracking devices or anything you can do on a smartphone, embrace it and find ways to use it because it's speed and recognition needs to happen at speed as well to be useful. You can't go up to someone 6 months later and say, oh, you did a great job 6 months ago and have it be impactful. It's action, reaction. It needs to be timely, and technology is great for capturing that information and using it. And then again, lastly, this slide is a presentation unto itself as well, but powerful communications and branding. You have to put a brand name on your program. Your employee total engagement program should not be called that. Right? It's like calling your dog dog. You have to put a brand name on it. You have to engage somebody, some professional to help you do that. And then you promote that brand like the valuable asset that it is. And you promote that brand on printed materials and catalogs and flyers and vouchers and websites and social campaigns and what have you. And again, you hire a company like me to go out and do that for you because this is all we do and we know how to do it well. The point is you want to envelop your workforce in the message that says, I care about you. Within the core values of our company, we're here to support you. We want to make you successful at what you do. We're not going to let your accomplishments go unrecognized. And once you have that culture and you're building on it and you're sharing on a regular basis and using all the communication tools available to you, you're going to have the maximum levels of success. So I once again shorted us. Mike, I'm going to jump out. I shorted us. We only have a few minutes for questions. I'm sorry, but I will answer all the questions that are asked, or Dr. Mel will, in emails after the fact if we run out of time. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mike, to handle the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. So yeah, we're running a little bit short on time. We do have a lot of great questions, so I apologize if we don't get to pick yours, but we will get back to them. First question. I had always heard that bad managers was the #1 reason people leave. So I assume their inability to provide recognition would be a part of that.
Yeah, true. But how truly unable are they to provide that, right? There is literally, this manager cannot deliver recognition. I could, no matter what I do, that person's not going to deliver recognition. I'd suggest to you that manager may have to go. But short of that, that's got to be the great exception, not the rule. Almost every manager can do it. Okay, some are way better than others. But how easy did you make it for them, right? How easy did? Because if you made them jump through 3 hurdles, fill out 5 forms, go buy their own gift cards, go do whatever, and that's the way they're doing it now. You're going to have managers that just don't do it. If I literally put a program in place, like I was saying earlier, where I can say, Bob, swipe, great job, key, 50 points, appreciate the hard effort, right? If that's how hard it is or how easy it is, or printed vouchers or what have you, then even a really bad manager or somebody who's not very good at delivering recognition can be nudged forward. And if they truly won't comply, I would consider that a black mark on their ability to do their job.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I think our engagement has diminished since our workforce went remote. Are there other ways to increase engagement among millennials other than being promoted? I mean, this is something my company struggles with.
Sure. So I would say everything I just said, right? Yes, the millennials want to be, and I don't mean that sarcastically, but because sometimes it's hard to just separate one from the other. You'll get millennial participation in your wellness program, but put some recognition rewards on it. Okay. In my own company, we run everything we run for our other companies, we do here as well. So much like Dr. Mel knows everything about wellness programs, we have wellness solutions embedded in our program. Okay. So the wellness solutions by program are not a great poster hanging on the wall and some passive invitation to come participate. It's a challenge company-wide to join the next walking competition or weight loss / weight gain competition, depending on whether you're trying to lose or gain. We just ran one of these again. We have team members who are pulled together in teams of 5 or 6 people. And then we have crazy numbers of teams, and they compete with each other. And they can see, like in the walking competitions in our wellness platform, we're doing a walk across the country competition right now. And you get to see where you and your teammates are along the way in a virtual world. And millennials live by this stuff. And plenty of other people as well. I got a 79-year-old mother. She's all over it, Facebook and online tracking and what have you as well. She wears a Fitbit every day. She tracks her steps. So millennials or otherwise, give them something that's fun and gamified to participate in on the wellness side. Do the same thing on the safety side. Do the same thing on the training side. Don't hold your training in a box and then expect that they remember it. Give them a quiz right after. Give them bonus points for getting it right. Put up a leaderboard in order to show them where they stand in the competition. Everything you do with your employee is an engagement opportunity if you look at it through the right lens. And then you say to yourself, how do I use this to keep them better in tune with what I'm looking for them? And you will find ways in every opportunity, from training to what have
you. All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Just want to thank you, Brian. Thank you, Dr. Amel, for sharing your knowledge and time with us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I just want to let you know this webinar will be available for playback for up to 90 days. Simply just log into worldatwork.org and then access your profile. Please allow 24 hours for that playback to be appeared. A reminder to please fill out a short survey, which will pop up momentarily at the end of this event. And if you have not downloaded the presentation from the chat pod, I will post the link again momentarily. The HRCI and SHRM codes should be available on your screen. Please keep track of these codes as they will not be available in the playback of this webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This one concludes today's webinar. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.